Kol amar kra. Ve'amar ma ekra. Kol habasar chatzir. V'chol chasdo ketzitz hasadeh. Yavesh chatzir navel tzitz. Ki ruach Adonai nashva bo. Achen chatzir ha'am. Yavesh chatzir navel tzitz. Udvar Eloheinu yakum le'olam. From the prophet Isaiah, a voice says, cry out, and I say, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass, all its beauty is like the flower of the field. Grass withers, flowers fade. Surely people are like grass. The grass withers and flower fades, but the word of our God shall endure forever. Kerachem av al banim, richam Adonai al yire'av, ki hu yada yitzreinu zachur ki afar anachnu. Enosh kechatzir yamav ketzitz hasadeh ken yatzitz. Ki ruach av rabo ve'enenu, v'lo yakirenu od mekomo. V'chesed Adonai me'olam ve'ad olam al yire'av, v'tzitkato livnei vanim. Tender as a father with his children, the Lord is merciful with his worshipers. God knows how we are fashioned. God remembers we all are but dust. Our days are as grass. We flourish as a flower in the field, but when the wind passes over and it is gone, and no one can recognize where it grew. But the Lord's compassion for his worshipers, his righteousness to children's children remain, age after age, unchanging. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai mi yagur b'oholecha, mi yishkon bahar kodshecha, holech tamim ufoel tzedek, v'dover emet bilvavo, lo ragal al shono lo asa l're'ehu ra'a, v'cherpa lo nasa al krovo. Nivze be'enav nim'as ve'et yir'ei Adonai yechabed. Nishba lehara v'lo yamir, kaspo lo natan b'neshech, v'shochad al naki lo lakach, ose'ele lo yimot le'olam. O Lord, who shall dwell in your sanctuary? Who shall abide upon your holy mountain? One who lives with integrity and does what is right, speaks the truth in his heart, who has no slander upon his tongue and does no evil to his fellow human being, who does not reproach his neighbor. In his eyes, a vile person is despised, but he honors those who revere the Lord. He takes an oath even to his own harm and does not change. He does not lend money at usurious interest, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. Whoever does these things shall stand firm forever. I'm really very honored that Meyer asked me to conduct this memorial service. When we met several months ago, no one knew when the service would take place, but he asked if it could be on a Sunday. He was conflicted, and he shared his concerns with me, for he knew well that Jewish tradition takes literally the verse in Genesis that states, "From dust thou art, to dust thou shalt return." But he felt that medical science could learn from his fatal illness, and so he decided to donate his body to the medical school. I can't think of a more appropriate Sunday of the year to have this memorial service. For when we spoke at length about his life, one concept came up repeatedly throughout our conversation, and that was expressions of gratitude. To quote my notes, "I've had a good life. I've had excellent medical care. The doctors, Paula, and hospice. I have a wonderful family and many wonderful friends and colleagues at NASA. The best thing I did in my life was to marry Paula. I had 30 wonderful years at NASA and retired 23 years ago at age 52 and a half. And since then, have traveled with Paula all over the world." And any of you who were close enough to Meyer to know have seen those beautiful photos which he took on all of those trips. I feel very fortunate. Meyer and Eli's parents came to New York from Poland, and he said that they spoke Yiddish to him, but he answered in English. Until the age of 14, the family lived in East Harlem, but then they moved to the Lower East Side. His father had a dry cleaning store in Harlem. He said that his early education he felt was not very good, but that a couple of his junior high school teachers took an interest in him and taught him math and English. And he got into Brooklyn Tech, and there, he said, he had the best teachers. He went on and got an engineering degree at CCNY on January 31st, 1964, and then got his master's in aeronautical engineering from the University of Colorado a year later. He spoke of going to Hebrew school at Haskell Lookstein Synagogue and also at Herzliya, and how, as a young man, he was involved in Habonim. Coming to Colorado, he says, was a big shock from someone who had never left New York City. In addition to the master's degree, perhaps in his view, even better than having the degree, was that he met Paula at Hillel on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. And they were married in 1965. When he started at NASA, he thought it would be maybe for a few years, but he stayed for 30 and had responsibility for a number of projects. Recently, 20 years after he retired, NASA honored him, and fully 40 colleagues came to that event to show their love and respect. Many of his NASA colleagues continued the connection, came to visit him, even more, sent cards. He told me that when he was offered early retirement, he hesitated at first, but he decided to do it, and he described the last 20 years of his life as nothing less than heaven on earth. In addition to those many trips around the world, he really enjoyed the classes in Senior Scholars, and as he put it, every day he could sleep late. He was a loyal friend, an unbelievingly caring family man. He kept in touch with relatives in Israel, England, and Argentina, as well as many here in this country. He traveled to Israel, he told me, a total of 16 times. The first time when he was only 11. He was so proud of his children, of Alyssa and Adam, and of Steve, his excuse me, and of Robert, his son-in-law, whom he said was like a son, and his granddaughter, Lexi, was very, very special. Alyssa and Adam and Alyssa's family were not in town, but they came often to visit him. And he loved it. And they loved it. As he put it, the diagnosis of cancer was a challenge. But he said that he got excellent care from his doctors and from hospice, and especially from Paula. He wanted to stay home, and so Paula became his nurse. And she cared for him and gave him, in the last months, even years of his life, an opportunity to enjoy people and things, many, many things, even though he was very ill. As he put it, he was grateful that when the diagnosis of cancer came, he had, quote, no responsibilities. He was a model patient and never complained and was never irritable. Perhaps the psalmist had him in mind. What a wonderful life. What a fulfilling life. What a very, very, very special man. I'd like to call now on Scott Graham, a colleague from NASA.
Thank you. I'm one of Meyer's NASA buddies, as he referred to us, and there's several of us here this afternoon. Paula asked me to read an email I sent to Meyer on Friday, November 9th, which was 2 days before he passed away. So it's a short email, and I will read it to you now. Hello, Meyer. I hope you receive this, but I understand that you may not. Paula informed me last night of your worsening condition. This may be my last communication with you other than through thoughts and prayers, and for that I am very sad. We last spoke on October 23rd. You sounded great, and I will always remember that conversation. You are truly inspirational and very strong. You so often said what a great life you had, and I'm proud of you for living the final stage of your life on your own terms, pain-free, this past year. As you said, you have lived far longer than your doctors predicted. I will never forget you, Meyer, and I will always remember you for your strength and courage. You are a true inspiration to me. Your positive outlook on life and death are awe-inspiring. I enjoyed working with you in my early NASA career. Our trips to Beverly Hills, Hollywood, and Las Vegas are cherished memories for me. I write this to you in present tense, but I know that will change soon. I pray to God for you, Paula, and your family. I know you are going to a better place. Love, Scott.
Ed, Weinstein, and Michelle.
Hi, everyone. Paula asked me to read this email that was sent by our son, Gabriel Weinstein, who is not able to be here today. Dear Paula, I'm so sorry to hear this sad news. I send my deepest condolences to you, Adam, Aliza, Rob, and Lexi. Meyer was a terrific person. He was so smart and had an insatiable appetite for knowledge. He inspired everyone in our family with his passion for science, travel, Judaism, his family, and life. I have many great memories of Meyer. I always enjoyed going over to your apartment to look at old photos with him, photo albums with him, and hear his travel tips. Meyer was a great role model. He epitomized what it meant to be a husband, father, grandfather, and friend. He was a true mensch. I have thought of you and Meyer a lot since I moved to New York City. Last Saturday, I went running around City College and envisioned Meyer roaming the campus as a budding scientist. I feel so honored to have known Meyer and call him a friend and role model. I will miss him a lot. Sending my love to you, Adam, Aliza, Rob, and Lexi. Sincerely, Gabe.
In January 1962, my parents, Ethel and Larry Weinstein of blessed memory, bought a house at the corner of Cottage Grove and Meadowbrook in Cleveland Heights. My parents decided to purchase this particular house in large part because it was a side-by-side two-family home with a Cottage Grove suite, which we would inhabit, and a Meadowbrook suite. When making the purchase, they had in mind a master plan that my maternal grandparents, after selling their dry goods store in Piedmont, Alabama, would move up north and live in the Meadowbrook suite. Unfortunately, my parents never had the strength and health to live on their own as our neighbors on Meadowbrook. This unexpected turn of events meant that, during our first 10 years in Cleveland Heights, we lived next to a variety of characters occupying the Meadowbrook suite. They were all very nice people and paid their rent in a timely manner. If my parents had viewed the two-family property as merely an investment, then I suppose that they would have been quite happy. But my parents were searching for something more for the Meadowbrook suite, as they had held on to what, at the time, appeared to be a pipe dream that the entire house should be occupied by family, not just tenants. I liken my parents' situation with their Meadowbrook rental property to that of the Banks family in the Mary Poppins story. Mr. and Mrs. Banks of London could never find the right nanny for their children. Similarly, Mr. and Mrs. Weinstein of Cleveland Heights could never find the right occupants for their Meadowbrook suite. However, just like the Banks, the Weinsteins had a major stroke of luck. One Sunday morning in June 1972, a west wind blew in from Euclid Heights Boulevard, and a beautiful young family then consisting of Meyer, Paula, and 9-month-old Adam Reshotko, appeared at our doorstep. My parents, my sister Sherry, and I realized quickly that we liked Meyer, Paula, and Adam, but we could not foresee how much we would enjoy being their neighbors for the next 5 years, and that we would remain close with the Reshotko family members and share Simchot together with them for the rest of our lives. When I first met Meyer, I was 13 years old. He recruited me to help him move boxes from their Euclid Heights Boulevard apartment to the Meadowbrook suite. He must have liked my work as a mover because he soon gave me another task, babysitter. I had had little training for this new job, and while I really liked Adam, I did not understand the need to be gentle with a baby. When babysitting, I regularly threw him over my shoulder and carried him around the house. Paula and Meyer saw that Adam actually took a liking to my approach and did not try to influence the way that I carried him. They were pleased with my babysitting services. In fact, when I entered high school and became involved with B'nai B'rith Youth Organization activities, which limited my availability on weekends, Meyer was not happy. He even went so far to declare, jokingly I'm sure, that he had asked his philanthropic cousin in New York to renounce his strong support of B'nai B'rith. I enjoyed watching Meyer, with his New York City roots, sprout into a Midwesterner and become accustomed to and appreciative of the pleasures of suburban living. For example, when Meyer and his family moved to their house on Canterbury Road in 1977, he embraced his new neighborhood's ritual of conducting an annual 4th of July parade. I remember one year marching next to Meyer as his guest at the parade, and he shared with me that while growing up in the city, he had watched on television scenes of festive neighborhood picnics from locations throughout the Midwest, and that he had been fascinated by the 4th of July community parades taking place in Kansas that he observed on television. While we were marching, he confided to me that every summer since moving to Canterbury, when taking part in the parade, he said to himself with great joy and satisfaction, "Meyer, I've a feeling I'm in Kansas now." Meyer was very proud of the contributions that he made to the NASA space program as a scientist and manager for 30 years. He loved working side by side with so many bright, devoted, and hardworking professionals, both at the Glenn Research Center at Lewis Field and at headquarters in Washington, D.C. That being said, he understood that he had been blessed to have been given the opportunity to take an early retirement when he was not yet 54 years old and in great health. As a new retiree, Meyer grabbed his camera and passport, headed to the airport, and saw the world over the course of the next 20-plus years. During his travels, Meyer took great pictures and presented them in an inventive way so that he could share his adventures with all of his friends and family after every trip. When in Cleveland during his retirement years, Meyer attended senior scholars classes and was the guy who sat in the front row and asked a lot of good questions which enhanced the quality of the lectures. Meyer liked that, in addition to his having the opportunity to support his own personal growth and learning, he could, as a retiree, always be available to help Paula, Adam, and Eliza, and any other family members and friends when they needed his assistance. In all, Meyer received an A+ in retirement and should serve as a role model for all of us regarding how this important stage of life must be approached. I appreciate that Meyer treated me as a younger brother and always showed a strong interest in my personal professional development. He was delighted when I fell in love with Michelle and immediately embraced her as part of the extended family. As you can tell from Gabe's letter that Michelle just read, Meyer also had a deep bond with our 3 wonderful children. Whenever we all got together, he made Anna, Gabe, and Jonah provide a detailed report about their travels, their educations, and career progress, as well as the current trends in the New York City neighborhoods where they were living. In turn, he would share with them stories about those same neighborhoods from the days of his youth. I know that Meyer also had a special place in his heart for my parents. When my father passed away, Meyer was a pallbearer and spent the entire week of Shiva with us. After the Shiva, he told me that the week of mourning had been good for him because it helped him deal directly with the shock of losing his good friend. Shortly after the conclusion of Shiva, he went over to my mother's house and volunteered to do chores for her. Before he left, he told her to ask him any questions about house maintenance and that he would be there for her in any way that he could help. I will always be thankful to Meyer for his kindness and devotion to our entire family since we first met him. When reflecting on the life of Meyer, it is impossible to ignore the subject of his love for Paula and the rest of his immediate family. Meyer was smitten by Paula's beauty and charm when he met her as an 18-year-old undergraduate student in Boulder, Colorado. With a great job offer in hand, Meyer simply could not leave Boulder and head for Cleveland without Paula. Fortunately, Paula accepted Meyer's marriage proposal, and they built a life together in Cleveland which was centered on love, devotion, and mutual respect. Meyer also deeply loved Adam and Eliza and found spending time with them as children and as adults his most rewarding and enjoyable moments. He regularly shared with great pride the many accomplishments of Adam and Eliza. He was so happy when Rob entered the picture and enjoyed traveling with him to Israel. And Lexi, she was the apple of his eye. Meyer has photographed some amazing scenes of villages, mountains, and seascapes located around the world, but he knew that there was no better subject for a photograph than his granddaughter Lexi dancing. I think that all of us observed firsthand the importance of family to Meyer, as he was able to identify and appreciate the one positive aspect of the illness that he suffered during the final years of his life, that it gave him an opportunity to spend countless hours alone with Paula so that they could reflect on all of the great joy that they had shared together during their wonderful 54-year marriage. He was also thankful for the outstanding care that Paula gave him on a 24-hour basis during his illness. I wish to conclude with a reference to the popular television series, The Wonder Years, which told the story of Kevin Arnold coming of age in the 70s. My favorite episode involved Kevin's parents buying a new car and the entire neighborhood running outside to inspect the new purchase. When I was growing up, I had a similar experience, and as you might guess, it involved Meyer. One summer afternoon, Meyer observed that my father and I were removing a new lawnmower from my father's truck. Meyer hustled outside to see the special purchase. The three of us were glowing with satisfaction as we loaded the lawnmower with gas and took it for a test cut. My father was happy with the powerful engine and the fact that he had found a great deal at Sears. I was delighted because the lawnmower included a grass retrieval bag, which meant that my weekly raking and sweeping time would most certainly be cut in half. But Meyer, the engineer, was focused on other things. He was impressed that the new machine included a modern gas tank indicator. He was bound and determined to figure out how the gas tank indicator worked. He took apart the contraption and discovered that it consisted of a bobber which controlled the indicator of how much gas was left in the tank. When he was done inspecting the lawnmower's gas tank indicator, he wiped his brow and proclaimed, "Brilliant, but simple." When Meyer completed his statement, my father and I said nothing, but smiled at each other. We both knew that Meyer had just, in his own words, summarized the way we viewed him. We admired that Meyer was a brilliant and multidimensional man, while at the same time a man who followed a simple approach to his life. Even though we were so close with Meyer, we were a little intimidated by him because, after all, he was a rocket scientist. We knew that he had a brilliant intellect and that during his 30-year career at NASA, he addressed and managed complex issues relating to heat transfer, noise reduction, and launch vehicle coordination impacting space missions. But just like the gas cap monitor invention, there was another side to Meyer which equaled his brilliance in terms of the importance of successfully describing the complete Meyer Reshotko. We admired that Meyer did not dwell on what was unimportant and that he tried to keep his life simple so that he had the time to focus on his various passions and interests. I never saw Meyer concern himself about the brand name posted on the outside of a car, piece of clothing, or any other material item. Instead, he was only concerned about what was inside the car or other material item and what made it work. He approached his interactions with people in the same simple manner. When Myers met someone new, he did not care about the person's looks, profession, level of education, address, or income. He was only interested in what that person had inside, what that person knew, and what that person could teach him. Indeed, Meyer embraced the simple but important pleasures of life, reading, learning, travel, photography, taking walks at Shaker Lakes, making new friendships, and most important, spending time with his beloved family. Like Paula, Adam, Eliza, Robin, Lexi, and all of you with us today, I will greatly miss interacting with both the brilliance and the simplicity of Meyer's life. However, I know that I will be comforted in the years to come by all of the terrific memories that I cherish from our over 46 years of friendship. Thank you very much for indulging me, letting me talk about my beloved friend, Meyer Reshotko.
Dr. Dan Litt.
First, I'd like to thank the rabbi for his special remarks, and certainly the two Weinsteins, daughter and father, who've really shared with us some extremely significant, important, touching, dear remarks, as well as Scott, who shared his letter and his all of what's been said till now has been brilliant and sterling. I hope I can shed a little more of some of my thoughts that will also be helpful to you as they've been helpful to me as I've thought about Meyer and feeling the deep sadness of his loss for me, for all of you. A tribute and a few words about what Meyer and his life means to me and what he left for all of us. Hearing the news of Meyer's death, together with my sadness, a Hebrew word suddenly struck me from out of nowhere. The word shekufiot. Shekufiot is the Hebrew word for those photo slides that Meyer and all of us used in the days before science delivered the digitals. And we know how long ago that was, and how long ago I met with Meyer and Paula. The Hebrew word shakuf, that's the root word, shakuf. It means transparency. It's the slides, those old slides that came, little square things. It's kind of a negative put into a frame. Shekufiot. And I don't know why that word came to me at first. I was puzzled. And I thought about it. And wow, did that make sense coming out of nowhere? Transparency, a negative, something clear. Transparent, not in the sense that one could see through, but transparent in that something was clear. And I think what struck me then was to think of Meyer as being so clear in who he was, what he was, and how we all saw him and felt him, how he touched us. Shakuf. Meyer, the man, and how he was and how he lived. He was transparent. We could see in that sense that he was so genuine. What we saw clearly. And then, with a little whimsy, he did call us, as some of us know, he called himself Meyer Angelo, the photographer. And that was another side of him. And it was his second career after NASA, Scott, as we all know. Meyer, the magnificently talented photographer, he had a marvelous second career, peering very profoundly into the life and souls of those he framed in his photos. Those were not just photos. Those were peering deeply into people. And then he peered out into the natural world of beauty in many lovely exotic places in the world that he and Paula traveled. There are too many of them to list here, but they were wonderful. And we saw those photos, the photos aesthetically, deeply, profoundly, about the natural and human-built world on this planet of ours. When I asked Paula, a day or so after Meyer died, she said in these last months, he was very busy, among other things of importance to him, trying to orderly transfer his photo transparencies, negatives now, today. All of them, I'm sure he had closets full of them. I knew there were drawers full of them. There were walls in their apartment full of what he created with his photography. And he said he wished his art to endure, and go on to delight and inspire all of us. Well, during his lifetime, those creations delighted and inspired us. No question about that. And let's remember, this is what I felt. Meyer was transparently all art in his scientific work too, I gather, as well as in the photography. And remember, this was art, and Meyer was not artifice. This was not an artifice person. He was a very real person. His art was what he showed us, and it was not artifice at all. He was very straightforward, direct, humor-streaked, and all the things that each of us, you as well as me, can bring to mind when we think of him and see him here with us at this memorial service. And with Meyer, shakuf, transparent. That's the word, I think. We could all feel the warm welcome of his smiling face. We could all see the touching and all-embracing love, so apparent all the time, of Paula, love of Adam, Elisa, Rob, and Lexi. Lexi, I see as, I think we all see, as the light of the family, the center stage, front, and all those lovely, 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 engaging photos as we watched her grow and will continue to do so. And, of course, his love for Eli, Adina, beloved nieces, so dear to him, all three, and all the rest of us, his colleagues at NASA, fellow students at the Cleveland Lifelong Learning, and the College of Jewish Studies, and the Case Western Reserve Senior Scholars. We all know him from a lot of those contacts, life-meaning, life-serving contacts. To speak with Meyer, he spoke of his great love and pride in this, our country. Thank you for the July 4th note. So touching, so beautiful. And this country, as it evolves to fulfill its promise of pluralism, as has been said by others, to be more like a symphony orchestra with its harmonies blending, with its different musical instrumentation, colorations, or sometimes like a jazz group with improvisation and challenges of a different kind. But as it evolves into this pluralistic society that many of us hope for, and not as a kind of a mixed up salad bowl of greens, or sometimes thought of as a melting pot. And together with that deep love for our country, Meyer took great pride as a son of the Jewish people, of his Jewish people, always up to date with his knowledge about what was happening in the country, in touch with family who lived there, and with the Hebrew culture, language. As Israel, his great love for Israel was as it too evolves to fulfill the centuries-old Jewish people's goal of universal peace and harmony, all in one person, Meyer, American and Jew. And then Meyer, husband, father, grandfather, brother, uncle, scientist, artist, profound friend to all who were fortunate enough, all of us here, to know him. Indeed, we are very grateful that what he was in our lives, transparent enough for us to be able to recognize all the good things in life, and that we could see what is most precious in a human life as he interacted and lived his life with all of us. What is most precious in a human life. We were sad as he fought the good fight, but it was square-eyed fight in these last years, with, of course, Paula at his side in more ways than we can imagine. And we usually conventionally say, well, very supportive. That really includes one heck of a lot, Paula. And for Meyer, and for us, Paula. So, I guess for Carol and me, the most precious now are our memories of those quiet moments together, a whole bunch of them that we had over the years with Paula and Meyer, noshing, eating, chatting, eating, catching up, more eating, dessert maybe, more sharing. And that's probably true for a lot of everyone here, and who have those kind of memories as well. And I know very well that our memories now of Meyer will be the most treasured of many memories that we have of people who've been closest to us. I know that our joining together, all of us here today, now, at this memorial service, to salute and pay tribute to Meyer, will provide, we hope, great comfort to Paula, rest of the family, all the mourning Reshotkos now. And we hope that these memories will be comforting to you in the many years to come, as treasured as they are for us as we think of Meyer today.
I'd like to call upon Meyer's niece, one of three, Deborah Reshotko.
Hi. First, I want to acknowledge Meyer has 5 nieces, because he also has his beloved Lisa and Leslie on the other side of the family. I'm on the Reshotko side, but I want to acknowledge you too. I've lived in Colorado for 31 years, though I grew up in Cleveland, and I always thought of myself as the first of the Reshotkos to be the pioneer to move west, but when I was listening to Rabbi Litovsky, I realized that's not true, that even though I moved in 1987 and my sister Naomi and her family followed soon after, and then my parents, Eli and Nadina, and then my cousin Adam, Meyer's son, we all, became the Colorado contingent of the Reshotkos. Meyer and Paula were really the real pioneers, because Meyer was there, he was 18, and Paula also not very old at all. And so anyway, from the Colorado side, these are some of my very treasured memories of Meyer. I'm just give just a very few of them. So the first time I remember meeting Uncle Meyer was when I was about 4 years old. And I know that I actually met him before that, because as a very devoted young uncle, he came to visit me in California soon after I was born. But back to the time that I do remember, my family and I were living in our rental house here in Cleveland on Coleridge Road. And I'm not sure I really knew what an uncle was, because the idea of my father or mother having a sibling seemed really confusing at that age. I thought of brothers and sisters as children. But suddenly, standing in front of me was this very happy-looking person, kind of a half kid, half man, just grinning at me. And I was a very shy child, but Meyer's smile won me over. We went into my playroom. I think Meyer was he was about 21 at the time. We went into my playroom and we played and we played and we played with all of my toys. I think we took every toy out. Meyer really kept up with me, or maybe I really kept up with him. What I remember is that both of our imaginations were running wild, and we acted silly, but we also built a number of fantastic imaginary worlds with my toys. Mostly, I just remember having so much fun with my new uncle. And it was a wonderful revelation that this really fun and loving person was related to me. And by the way, I also remember that Meyer and I did not clean up the playroom together. This was not really on the radar for either of us, and probably a hint of how our personalities would or did develop. Well, young Meyer had just come back from Israel, which I knew was a big deal, even at 4 years old. He brought Naomi, my sister, and me, my youngest sister Miriam wasn't born yet, some beautiful hand-embroidered dresses, which became favorite articles of clothing for all three of us girls, until we very sadly grew out of them. We always called them the Uncle Meyer dresses. So fast-forwarding a number of years through some other treasured memories, like Meyer bringing his bride Paula to meet us and to live with us for a few weeks in Cleveland until they got married. And it was really lovely for me that Meyer and Paula lived so close to us in Cleveland. First of all, we'd never had any family that lived near us. All of our family was in New York. And so to have really close family right by us was very, very meaningful to me as a child. And I learned a real lot, I now realize, about healthy ways to grow up and to have a relationship by watching young Paula and Meyer be so truly in love with one another, visiting them in their apartment and seeing them set up their house. And I'll always remember the glowing look on Meyer's face as he held his young son Adam at Adam's bris. I also remember how indulgent Meyer and Paula were at watching my sisters in my impromptu plays and dances that we performed constantly in their living room. Meyer and Paula always treated us as really special people, not as kids, just as individuals that they wanted to get to know, and they took so much of their time to get to know us. When I was 14, I had to go to the hospital and stay overnight to have my wisdom teeth pulled. I was so surprised when I saw my Uncle Meyer walking down the hospital ward to see me that evening. He gave me a beautiful framed photo of my sisters, my cousins Adam and Eliza, that he had taken himself, of course. At first I was nervous. Did this mean that I was sicker than I thought I was? But then I realized that no, this is my generous and loving uncle who cared so much about his niece that he took the time to reach out and make a special connection with me when I was in a more vulnerable place. Well, Meyer's work with Martin Marietta in Colorado brought him to Denver numerous times soon after I had moved there. Meyer always came to visit me and was always filled with questions about my life, really wanting to continue to learn who I was becoming as an adult. Meyer's ongoing research into our Reshotko family genealogy brought us a new Denver cousin, Dory Schwartz, who regretfully isn't here tonight. but she lived literally down the street from Phil, my husband, and me, but we would never have crossed paths and certainly never known that we were related had it not been for Meyer. When Meyer first knew that he had cancer, he talked with me about it one-on-one at my niece, his great-niece, Maya's bat mitzvah. He was very honest about what was going on with him and was excited to share medical details with me, given that my work is as a nurse. He made it clear that he was going to fight his absolute hardest to get through it, but also acknowledged with a wry smile that, and here I'm paraphrasing what I remember, I have a little suspicion that maybe the cancer is a little further along than they can treat. And if that's the case, well then I really have had a great life, and I'm okay with it. In that moment, he showed such wise self-awareness, such graciousness, and even humor in the face of sobering facts. I was so impressed at how he held on to his peaceful and gracious awareness as he continued on through his journey through cancer, always maintaining his interest in life and all those whom he loved, and all the issues he was so passionate about, especially his artful photography and the very unartful politics of the last 2 years. In this way, he mirrored to us all the best path for continuing to live a fulfilling life. In Judaism, we always say, may his life be for a blessing. Meyer's life has been a blessing for me. His commitment to family, his genuine love for his family and his friends, as well as his passion for pursuing life, even while acknowledging that death is close by, will be inspiration for me for the rest of my life.
Meyer's brother, Dr. Eli Reshotko.
In my remarks, I will try not to repeat what you've already heard. Meyer and I were like two only children. When I graduated with my undergraduate degree and left home to go elsewhere, he was not quite yet 9 years old. And so my major contact with him in the early years was as a babysitter. But if we proceed further, he declared that he wanted to be an engineer. And my mother thought that if you're going to be an engineer, there's an example before you. Why don't you go to the same places that Eli went to? And because it came out okay. So when the time came to take the entrance exams for the Bronx High School of Science, where I went, Meyer invited himself to Cleveland because I was already working at NACA. And in that way, he avoided taking the Bronx Science exams, went back the next week, took the Brooklyn Tech exams, got into Brooklyn Tech, and it's a very fine school, and graduated. Then a few years later, when it came time to go to college, he invited himself to California, as Deborah said, to see his new niece, and in that way avoid the Cooper Union exams. And when he got back, he enrolled in City College, and he enrolled as an electrical engineer. I was a mechanical engineering major, so he wanted to do things differently. He was very independent in that way. After about a year at City College, he decided that he didn't like electricity that much, and he changed his major to mechanical engineering. Upon graduating from City, while he was still an undergraduate, he occasionally took a trip to Vermont to see what skiing was like. And he liked it. So when it came time to pick a graduate school, he applied to the University of Colorado Boulder, and of all things, the aeronautical engineering program. And while there, as has been mentioned, he met Paula. About a year later, I was invited by the department to give a talk there, and so that was my first opportunity to really meet Paula, and how lovely that was. In fact, we in the family didn't know what Meyer would find in Colorado, and there he found a nice Jewish girl from Elizabeth, New Jersey. Upon graduating, he was looking for a job, and he accepted an offer from NASA Lewis. By that time, I had already left NASA, and I became a faculty member at Case Institute of Technology. When Meyer came back, he had to figure out how to get to and from work, so it turned out that my place in the carpool was still open, and he took my place in the carpool. And then he embarked on a 30-year career at NASA. Of course, the other aspect of this period was that we were reunited. We were both in the same city. And so we saw a lot of Meyer, Paula, and later their children as they were born and grew. And as has been mentioned, after a 30-year career at NASA, he actually took a buyout, and that enabled him to embark on the next phase of his life, which has been very amply described, of travel, photography, lifelong learning. And what has to be mentioned is that in all of this, Meyer made many, many friends. Meyer was always making friends. He was what we call in Yiddish hachevreman, and in the best sense of the word. As we go further, about 4 years ago, he became aware of the fact that he had skin cancer. And he entered the various phases of treating the skin cancer, surgery, after a number of surgeries, the chemo, radiation. The one thing that typified Meyer in this was, of course, his curiosity, and as an aspect of the curiosity, he treated himself as if he were a member of the treatment team. In other words, there's a treatment team, and he was the patient, but he was also a member of the treatment team. He wanted to know in detail everything that the surgeons were thinking, the nursing staff, the radiation oncologist. He wanted to know everything and to participate in understanding and, in some sense, decision-making. After a number of years of treatment, he decided that this was not enhancing his quality of life. And he then decided to go into hospice at home. And he felt liberated by that because he was no longer getting any treatment. And he was pretty strong. And he actually had a pretty good year. When he slept a lot, but when he was awake, he was himself, absolutely himself. And that continued far beyond what the hospice people had predicted. But then, about a month ago, his situation got precipitously worse. in discussing what would happen at the end of his days, he referred to the end of his days as when I go to medical school. And so it happened. He died 2 weeks ago today, and I presume that he's teaching them something in medical school. In our hearts and minds, Meyer, you will always be with us. We love you, and we will sorely miss you.
Adam, listen.
So something that almost everyone knew about my father is how much he loved travel. Throughout my life, I have memories of taking family trips all together, a trip that my father and I took alone, just the two of us, and hearing about trips that he took with my mom and trips he took by himself. Some of my favorite childhood memories were visiting my grandparents in New York City, my father's hometown. And while we were there, we spent time visiting with my grandparents and other family, but we also went all over the city. My dad showed us where he grew up, where he went to school. My mom would show us where she liked to hang out when she was a teenager. And we also managed to sightsee all through Manhattan, all the way from Battery Park up until where my dad grew up in Harlem. We didn't yet know about all the great places in the Bronx, but now we all know. We found that out. And I still make these long road trips between Cleveland and New York, just as I did as a child, only now I'm with my husband and my daughter, and we go in the opposite direction. But just as my dad taught us to pass the time, we now listen to Broadway soundtracks, and that keeps us interested while we're driving. And my parents still came to visit me a lot, and we got to have lots of fun adventures in the city. When I was 12, my family took a very exciting summer vacation to California. I had never been west of Chicago, and I had always thought of California as kind of a magical, interesting place that I wanted to visit, so I couldn't wait for our vacation. In our 10 days that we were there, my dad planned us a jam-packed itinerary. We visited 3 different cities. We drove down Lombard Street. We had ice cream sundaes in Ghirardelli Square. We went to Disneyland and Universal Studios, and we went to the beach. And you may not be able to picture my parents in Disneyland or the beach, but they did. And my favorite part of this trip was we got to see the show Cats in Los Angeles. And this might also be hard to believe, but my dad wasn't into photography at the time, so I don't think we have a single photo from the entire trip, but we have a lot of good memories. As I got older, we took more fun family vacations. We went to the Adirondacks. We went to Toronto to see different shows and baseball games, and we visited with family in Denver. In addition to traveling for fun, my dad also took a lot of business trips in his 30 years at NASA, and he tried to make the most out of his travel while he was there and still do fun things in the evenings. And one of my dad's passions and kind of one of the great gifts he gave to me was the love of musical theater. So when he was in Los Angeles, he'd always try to see some shows, and while he was there, he saw Miss Saigon, he saw Phantom of the Opera, and he saw Les Miserables. And when he came home, he would tell me all about it, and he'd bring me the soundtrack, and we'd listen to it together. When he got back from seeing Les Miserables, he had all these extra photos and promotional materials, so I asked him how he got all of that. So the night that he went to see the show happened to be opening night, so he got there early because he was curious to see what was going on, and he saw some press area, so he went over and said that he was from a small newspaper in Ohio called the Sun Press, and they had sent him to Los Angeles to cover the opening night. And I don't know if they believed him, but they gave him a press kit anyway, and he brought it home and shared it with me, and it was one of my favorite souvenirs. When I was a little bit older, in 1997, he took me on one of the most special trips of my life. We went to Paris, London, and Israel, just him and I. It was just the two of us, and we got to spend a lot of time together and really get to know each other in a whole new way. I'd been to Israel before, but this was my first time in Paris and in London. And he showed me all around. He taught me how to take the tube in London and how to get around Paris. And we went to the Louvre and all these amazing places that I'd only seen on TV. And he got to take me to all of them, which is very exciting. We stayed at a small little boutique hotel. And after we checked out, he told me that the owners of the hotel thought that I was his wife instead of his daughter. And he thought that was hilarious. I did not think so as much, but he got a big kick out of that. A few years later, for my 30th birthday, I went to Italy with some of my good friends. So my dad didn't go on the trip, but he took a lot of enjoyment in helping me plan it. He gave me advice on hotels, which guidebooks to read. He told me how to take the train from the airport. He said it would just be like my morning commute on Metro North, and he was right, it was. And most importantly, he taught me how to take good pictures. So probably from one of my first trips that I actually have a lot of good pictures, because he told me all his techniques. And then, as you also probably know, in the 23 years since my dad retired, he traveled all over the world, both with my mother and by himself. And he certainly wanted to see all different sites, but it was also really important to him to get to know people from all different cultures and to see how they lived, and he managed to pretty much make friends everywhere he went. One of our last family vacations was in August of 2015. In honor of my parents' 50th anniversary, all 6 of us, me, Rob, Lexi, Adam, and Mom and Dad, went to Cape Cod, the location of my parents' honeymoon. We rented a house on the beach in the same town where they stayed 50 years ago, and we spent a week having fun adventures all over the Cape. We went on a pirate ship, we went to the JFK Museum, we went to Nantucket, and we had a special anniversary dinner. It was one of the best vacations I've ever had, and most importantly, gave all of us, but especially my daughter Lexi, some really great memories of spending time with her family and with her grandparents and her uncle. Before my dad started his cancer treatment and before his life turned upside down, we took one more family trip. We came from all our different cities to meet up in Portland, Oregon for the bat mitzvah of my cousin Maya, Uncle Eli's youngest grandchild. And we didn't know this at the time, but this would be our last family trip, and it was my dad's last time outside of Cleveland. And although at the time we had no idea what was in store for us, there was something about this trip that just seemed a little more special. It felt really good to have everyone together, our immediate family, our extended family, our close family friends. And luckily, this trip we have a lot of pictures from. When I think about my dad, there's so many different things that come to mind, but one thing that I'm always going to think about is him traveling, learning, exploring, and doing one of his favorite things, getting to know people. I love you so much, Dad, and I will carry you with me in my heart wherever I go.
Hello. I would like to talk about the last visit I had with my dad. In the past year, I live in Denver, as many of you know, and I've been trying to come back to Cleveland as much as I could to see Dad as many times as I could, not knowing how much time we would have left. Came about every 6 weeks or so. And But what ended up being the last trip was going to be a little different. In the past year, in addition to my dad being in the condition he was in, my mother's sister, my Aunt Wendy, also was in ill health. And so, of course, my mom, who hadn't seen Wendy in several years, wanted to pay her a visit. She lives in Philadelphia. But she was busy taking care of Dad. As you've heard in other people's stories, she really was his primary caregiver throughout the past 3 years. But we knew I had a trip coming up planned. I was going to be there the last weekend of September. So about a month before we talked about it, that she would train me on Saturday, teach me whatever I needed to do, and we'd practice it to take care of Dad for one day. And for one day, she would fly into Philadelphia and have a visit with Wendy. And that's just what we did. Mom was as good a teacher as she was taking care of him. Dad was a patient and helpful patient. And we had a day together. Not eventful, but we sat together, we talked some, we watched a little TV. We just spent the day together. And it was very good for us. And we were also felt so good that we were able to let Mom get away for a day and have a visit with her sister, which was also very good. But what we didn't know at the time was really how special it would be. Wendy passed away on November 7th, and 4 days later, Dad was also gone. So these special visits were our last ones. So Dad, thank you for everything. I will always love you. I will always miss you.
When I mistakenly talked about nieces, obviously I was just referring to Eli's children. Wendy's, the late Wendy, whom you just heard about, her daughter Leslie is here. We extend our sympathies to you, and I understand you're going to read the words of Paula.
This is Paula talking. For my beloved Meyer. Meyer always wanted and urged me to send an update. And without quite asking, he let me know he really wished for me to say something at his memorial. So this is the last update. We enjoyed our long, stable time together. Meyer loved the visits from friends, Eli and Adina, the nieces, his cousins, especially our kids, and Lexi. He looked around and he said he felt so safe and comfortable in our home and had the whole world at his fingertips via the computer. He watched too much news. He spent hours enjoying looking at the beautiful photos of our trips and our family on the computer. He called old friends, his cousin in Israel, and his brother when he was up to talking. Like the true polymath he was, he read fiction, politics, biography, history, science, and left a stack of books to be returned to the library. Meyer was always curious, sometimes annoyingly so, like when I was in a hurry and he was reading every notice posted wherever we were. Sometimes embarrassingly so, like when the kids were little and he went up to strangers to inquire what was happening. Meyer always asked about everybody's kids and grandkids. He was engaged and engaging, and we were good together. We were tickled that he went over his expiration date, as he liked to say, and we were so happy that we got to have our 53rd anniversary, the day before my birthday. Sorry, I had to say that. And his 77th birthday. We told his doctor that we were renewing our lease. And we felt that we were such a good team through these past 3 years and had become even closer than before the cancer. Meyer loved people, and he loved life, and he would have liked more, but he truly felt and expressed his gratefulness for having led such a good life. A month before he died, he got his last and best toy, a film converter. For 2 manic weeks, he gave up sleep and converted negatives to digital, delighting in seeing our old trips. And finally, he collapsed and had a 2-week rapid decline. He always told me that marrying me was the best decision he ever made. He was my life's companion, and he tried to leave me taken care of. He ordered light bulbs for every fixture and labeled the boxes. Yeah, true. He threw out and replaced old batteries and flashlights. I have a lifetime supply of duct tape and WD-40. He apologized for never having cleaned his office. He told me he knew it would be hard, but I'd be okay. To go out a lot, at least the first year. To go to the gym, senior scholars, lunch with friends, and keep coloring my hair and getting that keratin stuff. He thanked me for taking care of him as he did every day. All his nurses and doctors loved him because he appreciated the great care he got, and he always thanked them. He always made sure I gave all the nurses and helpers a biscotti, I have one too, on their way out. His only regrets were not seeing Alexis grow up and being at her bat mitzvah and not being able to take care of me when my time comes. But he promised I will be okay, and so I will be for him. My beautiful Meyer, you are a blessing forever. With all my love, Paula.
We've come together this afternoon sharing our sorrow and paying tribute to Meyer Reshotko. We all recall the wonderful blessings of his life, and we thank God for that life, for all that he accomplished, for the love that he shared, for the precious memories which shall endure with all of us. Eternal God, Creator, merciful Father of all, your children bowed in grief seek light to dispel the dark gloom which threatens to overwhelm them. Be gracious to all of us who mourn. Bless us with your compassion. Ease our burden of sorrow, and send us the light and peace. For it is written, fear not, as I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, and I will sustain you with my power. Amen. Please rise for the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kandfei HaShechina B'ma'alot Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Harakia Masirin Et Nishmat Meyer ben Mordechai Halevi Besara Shalach Lo Lamo Bigan Eden Tehei Menuchato Ana Bal Harachamim Astirehu Beseiter Kenaftecha Lolamim Utzror Bitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachlato V'yanuach B'shalom Al Mishkavo V'nomar Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Meyer Reshotko, who is gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is his portion. May he rest in peace. and let us say, Amen. Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei, be'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei v'yomei chon, u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalau v'zman kari v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam l'olmei olmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. The family will be in the community room of the Thornton Park, of the Thornton House, 3333 Warrensville Center. You are asked to park in the Thornton Park parking lot, and when you come to the door, to ring the bell for the community room, which is on the first floor of the apartment house. This concludes our memorial.